672 KROE. That's 672 5763. Now, your hosts on the Jackson Electric Open Lines, Steve Sisson and Floyd Whiting.
Good morning and welcome to the Jackson Electric Open Lines. I am Floyd Whiting here with my friends Steve Sisson, Trevor Jackson back in the booth, Aaron Linden, and Madison Danforth. Now, before we go too much farther, we want to say that our hearts go out to the families of the kids that were involved in an accident yesterday. Our hearts are heavy, as are many individuals in the city right now, and we want to acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
Moving forward, I want to welcome back Mr. Trevor Jackson. Boy, it's good seeing you in there, buddy.
I wish I could say the same for you.
And that's why we miss Trevor.
And there it is.
That's the show.
There
And
we
we're
have
done.
it. No, it's extra good to have him back because that was lacking.
Just that good acid burn in the morning, you know? It's things I need. And I do want to thank Mr. James Timberlake for stepping up and stepping in. It's always good having him in here. Always good having his perception as well when we talk about these issues. Now, the issue going forward this morning, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Let's look at the poll question. Mr. Sisson.
So we were just going to ask if you even knew what was going on there. And so our question was, are you familiar with what is transpiring with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? And 60% of those responding said yes, they are. 33% said no, and 7% don't care. Which,
care.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's encouraging. I mean, at least there's some, there's not a whole lot of apathy out there.
Right.
I'm kind of in between the yes and no, I guess. I mean, I guess I would say yes, but not very much about it. I mean, I know there was some damage done. They suspected sabotage, and that's about the extent of my knowledge.
I'm going to go as far as to say this. Folks, if you're one of the individuals out there who didn't know what was happening with Nordstrom, don't feel like you're out of the loop. I've noticed in today's day and age, there is so much news coming in at one time that it can be pretty hard to just get everything, because back in the day, you sat in front of the TV in the morning, for a half hour, you got caught up. You sat in front of the TV for a half hour or maybe even an hour with good old Tom Brokaw, and he got you caught up on what was going on for the day.
Ted Koppel, and I remember watching those shows.
Those are great, man.
Yep.
Nowadays, there's just so much all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a constant feed.
And your news is basically one or two sentences.
Yeah.
They will mention something and move on to something else.
Yes, yeah, and they're pretty broad. Look, there's news at different levels, folks. There's journalism at different levels. Aaron and I were having this conversation the other day. When was the last time you sat in front of the TV and watched your national news, no matter who that is, and they talked about senators and House representatives sitting and making decisions on a committee? You remember that?
Not very often.
No, not very often.
No.
That's news. That's the laws of the land being pushed forward, and that's the discussions that are happening.
Unless you sit in front of C-SPAN. You're not going to see
Then you're not really going to know what is truly going on. A lot of people just think these folks are up there on Capitol Hill, screaming into each other's offices. I don't like you. So, look, if you want to basically remove yourself from the back and forth talking heads, turn that off. Turn on your local stuff. Your local stuff's going to tell you facts.
Hopefully in a non-biased fashion.
In a non-biased fashion.
I'm not going to interject my politics into a news story. That's what you need.
Yeah. Once you move up to that national level, the interests are just too dang involved.
It's a lot like government, where there's more accountability the more local you get.
Exactly.
And media is the same way.
Exactly. So I would suggest everyone, listen to your local news. Pay attention to what's going on in your state and the things that you can actually make a difference in. Now, that being said, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, I didn't know.
Right. I brought it to your attention.
You brought it to my attention, Aaron. So what do we got?
All right. So the poll question was, are you familiar with what is transpiring with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and I was very much so early on. So just a little quick background, if you're unfamiliar with it. The pipeline is 762 miles long. It's a natural gas pipeline that runs from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea. It has depths between 262 feet and some places as deep as 360. The pipeline is owned by Gazprom, which is a Russian-owned energy company, and it can carry upwards of 110 billion cubic meters of natural gas a year. Well, we don't know what that means, I broke it down. 110 billion cubic meters, if broken down into, it comes out to 1 cubic meter per second, which is equivalent to 1,000 liters per second. Well, we're Americans. We don't do liters, right?
Got to be our own.
That actually breaks out to 264 gallons a second.
Wow.
A lot.
Wow, that's moving.
On Monday, September 26th, there were several undersea blasts consisting of hundreds of pounds of underwater explosive meant to sabotage the pipeline that were carried out in quick succession. And they, whomever they are, were successful. Interestingly enough, this sabotage occurred in a zone that is controlled by the U.S. intelligence services. And they actually have radar of American aircraft, helicopters in that area around that time. So up to this point, roughly 778 million cubic meters of natural gas have escaped from the pipeline. That's the equivalent of 250,525,856,735 gallons of natural gas. Roughly a third of Denmark's greenhouse emissions for a year in 2020.
My God.
It's a lot. Currently, they've actually identified 4 ruptured areas in the pipeline, but the water at depth has now reached equilibrium to a point that it offset the pressure of the gas, and thereby it is keeping it trapped in the pipeline. They actually haven't turned it off or fixed it yet. So this incident has caused natural gas prices to soar in an already stressed market and shortage in Europe as winter is approaching. Not a good combo. So it's time to play the blame game. Russia says it's the U.S. U.S. is blaming Russia, and President Xi's probably just sitting back, right, rubbing his hands with anticipation. So with that, I had one final thought on the discussion before we get into the rest of this. As such an environmental disaster, with so much greenhouse gas being spilled in the atmosphere, I wonder where all of the environmentalists are. Because you haven't heard word one from John Kerry.
Haven't.
AOC didn't dive a Dawn suit and go down and plug the hole like Dutch boy style. So that's the thing, though, is what do you know about it? Because nobody's talking about it. And if we're that worried about the environment and global warming and emissions, that's a ton. That is a ton in one localized incident, and nobody has said a word really about it.
Yeah.
So with that, I open it up to whatever you want to talk about.
Go ahead and give us a call, folks. 674-4443 or 672-5763. What do you think? Let us know, is this, was this one of our operations? How would the United States benefit?
So this is the weirdest part of this thing, though. And I've got a soundbite if you want me to play it, of Biden in a press conference held on February 7th, 2022. A reporter had asked him what would happen if Russia invaded Ukraine. And he said, if Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. There will no longer be a Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The reporter said, he said, we'll bring an end to it. The journalist asked Biden, how are you going to do that since it's in German control? They have the project. President replied, I promise you, we will be able to do it. Now, I'm not saying that that was a threat or that we did carry it out, but what did he mean by that?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, fast forward a few months after Russia invaded Ukraine, and boom, you got 4 giant blasts taking out the pipeline. Yep. It's interesting, if nothing else. You know, we love conspiracy theories. So you go back and check those facts and you go, wow.
And you said there is radar?
There's radar imagery of U.S. helicopters and aircraft in that area at the time.
I would love to know, we're not talking Hueys here. What are we talking? Blackhawks?
That's what I'm wondering.
You know what I mean?
Unidentified, no tail numbers,
right? What are we
right?
looking at here? All right, we do have a caller. Go ahead, caller. You're on the Jackson Electric Open Lines.
Yes. I guess to start with, you said that there was an accident and children were injured or something like that, and you never elaborated, and now you got my curiosity up. That's not why I called. But I'd like to know more about what you just said about that.
There is a news story on Sheridan Media that you can read.
Yeah, we'll send you that direction. If you would like to know more, just jump on SheridanMedia.com, and you can find it there.
Okay. Well, the reason I called in is Jimmy Barr passed away on September 11th, and there was no funeral, nothing. And so I kept looking because he was a friend of mine and a fellow musician. And now the Legion is going to have a tribute on the 8th of this month at 6 o'clock. And so people that would like to come down and remember Jimmy Barr.
Is this the Sheridan American Legion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So there you go.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Sheridan American Legion, Jimmy Barr. I didn't know him. Steve, musician.
I'm not familiar with him, no.
Not familiar with him? Well, there you go, folks. If you knew him, you can celebrate his life with fellows. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of interesting, we'll call it evidence, that points in our direction as, did we do this? But what would we benefit in doing so? How would...
One of the benefits would be Russia was going to make a lot of money on this pipeline because Europe has a huge gas shortage, natural gas, petroleum gas right now. The U.S. now exporting to those countries is going to probably make about 5 times more money. So you debilitate Russia's ability to raise those funds during a war that they already are losing.
They're on their heels.
They're on their heels. Yeah. And I mean, like we talked about last week, I think their tanks run out of gas on the way to the war.
Just leave them there.
Right. Yeah. So there could be a lot of benefit to it. I mean, you really think about what this would take to pull off. How many countries in the world could pull this off? China, Russia, us, probably.
Deep water demolition.
Navy SEALs
that's
stuff.
Pretty rough.
Right?
That's tough to pull off.
That's tough to pull off. And especially in 4 consecutive boom blasts.
I would also like to see what part of the Balkan, what did you say? This was the Baltic Sea.
Baltic
Sea.
Yep.
That sea is not known for being calm.
Correct.
It's pretty rough waters out there.
You know, and people go, oh, well, Putin did it. And then you're like, why would he do that? Why would he demolish his own pipeline and take away a huge source of funding?
And something else you have to ask is, what's the risk of us being exposed if we did it?
Right.
Yeah. What chances are you taking there? Is it worth that risk?
You know, and so you could make the argument, you know, Putin did it to blame us, you know, and start a media circus.
Maybe
that way,
get some sort of support. Yeah.
Right, but why would you do that when it's one of your biggest funding sources right now? And why would China do it? They're like buddies, you know?
Yeah.
So
God, you know,
without going out there and just saying it, it sounds very Navy SEAL-y.
Well, I'll say this. It's really tough to make comments on situations like this during times of war. Are we at war? No. But
kind of.
The United States has a dog in the fight.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Between money and munitions.
Their chips are in.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
So China, I don't feel has a dog in the fight outside of influence, outside of your buddy doing something. I can't think of any reason why China would even.
Yeah, they have their own interests, and they're just kind of waiting to see what the political climate is. I think once the fallout is done, I think
they're patient.
Yes,
that's the scary thing. The scariest thing about the Chinese giant. They are. They are patient. God, I hate to say it, but all signs point to home.
Right?
Now,
there's no place like home.
The tooth fairy or the Smurfs, I can tell you that. and if people believe that the United States has never done anything like this, or we've never cyber attacked any countries. You're crazy because we do it too.
We do.
We need to have a lot of our politicians stop acting all innocent.
Yeah. I think out of everything that we have done, when our politicians put their hands up and kind of take the 4 steps back and go, I don't know what you're talking about. That's where I'm like, okay, they know what I'm talking about. I can remember a caller, one of our first shows, Steve, years back. Someone called in and said, why is the United States here or there?
Yes.
Why do we have troops here or there? And that's because we have interests in the entire world. Everyone who tells you we need to shut our borders and come inside and only worry about home doesn't understand the global economy and the globalization that the United States has taken on after World War II. We have financial interests all over this world, and we will do, as a nation, what we need to do to secure those financial interests. What we need to do. That's a broad statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I
What
really
we
want
think
to,
we need to do.
What is ethical in a
Right.
time of war? What is moral in a time of war? It's something that we've always gone to and we will always discuss as the sun keeps rising. I don't know how to feel about this if the United States did it. I like to think that we did it for a reason.
If we did do it, yeah,
If we did
there
do
had
it.
to be good
Now-
A
reason
strong
behind
point
it.
behind
Here's another thing, though. If the United States did this, boy, we left a lot of evidence.
Kind of.
We left a
but,
bread trail all the
You know,
way home.
at the same time, they're good enough that they didn't necessarily. They could have been, we were doing operations in the area, and we just happened, to be in the U.S. surveillance area.
Who's in control of those waters? Did you say it was Germany?
No, well, so the pipeline is owned by Gazprom, which is a Russian-owned energy company.
Russian-owned energy company.
And it runs from Russia to Germany. The supply ends in Germany, and then they disperse it to the rest of the European nations. But it's controlled. The area that was sabotaged is in control by the U.S. Intelligence Services Zone.
So it's our zone.
It's our zone. And if you think that we wouldn't have known that somebody else was in our zone,
Oh, God, yeah.
especially because intelligence surveillance, I mean, it's a little sketchy.
Now, has Biden or his administration, anyone in his administration, stepped forward and said, no, we didn't do this?
No.
No one has come forward
No.
and denied it.
No, and most of the media that's been reporting on this says, we think we know exactly who did this. Hard stop, period.
Yeah, they don't say,
haven't
yeah.
moved on from that point. They haven't said jack boo.
Nobody's come forward and
No one.
they haven't denied it. They haven't condemned it.
Not really. I wouldn't say condemnation. It's more like, well, there was sabotage and
beating around the bush.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We
Politics.
didn't do it.
Yeah, nobody has really said anything. And like I said, the environmentalists, you would think Greenpeace, you would think AOC, you would think John Kerry, you would think that area that kind of really supports, offsetting
yeah.
carbons would come out and say something.
But they can't blame a big oil company on it, and that
Right.
that it doesn't score many political
Yeah,
points.
this ain't like what happened in the Gulf.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. we can point the finger at this evil corporation. You can't really do that in this case.
and it's not, Valdez, where
Right.
Yeah.
some drunk
Negligence.
guy crashed a boat. It's like, no, this wasn't an accident.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
Someone
it
didn't
was-
trip over the pipeline.
right.
I just went snorkeling.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I was just down there and I happened to fall over it. Yeah, no.
This is just it's a really interesting story. Now I haven't seen this. Now I try not to pay too much attention to what the talking heads are yapping about on the national news. So I will admit that this could be all over the place on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, and I wouldn't know.
It's not on the last two. Really. I
Okay.
mean, so
Okay.
CNN,
No, but, yeah.
MSNBC have not really touched on this at all.
Okay.
Fox has covered it extensively, as well as, Newsmax and some of those organizations. But
The
that
conservative
becomes
organizations.
part of the interesting thing about the poll question is it would be interesting to know where those people found out or didn't find
really
out.
would. Yeah.
You know, is the percentage that said, yes, we know about this? Are those Fox people and the CNN, MSNBC folks are the ones that said no? Is it vice versa?
Yeah.
I have my suspicions on it, but I think it's been something that has been reported fairly heavily on if you're looking in certain places.
Now, certain news organizations have really kind of taken a stance, a very pro-Putin stance as well. Have you noticed whether or not it's those organizations that are reporting this?
Yeah, and I don't know that anybody's necessarily pro-Putin. I mean, they'll say, you know, he's a bad guy, you can hate him, everybody does, but why would he do this to himself?
Yeah.
And that's a valid question. That's a good point. You know, why would he disable one of his economic streams during a war? Mm-hmm. He wouldn't. I don't think.
We got a caller real quick. Let's hear what they've got to say. Go ahead, caller. You're on the Jackson Electric open line.
Hey, well, I've really enjoyed your thoughts and information you provided. I knew a little bit about the pipeline, but you've provided some additional information that I think is interesting. But I don't know why we should, and I think you've kind of intimated this. I mean, why would we believe what this administration has to say about this? I mean, Putin's been their scapegoat over and over again, and turned out that they've lied to us over and over again. I mean, if you tried to prove this put all the evidence on both sides together and looked at it objectively, you'd have to say the United States did this. I mean, yeah.
It certainly appears so, doesn't it?
Your lying eyes, you know.
It certainly appears that the breadcrumbs lead right back to the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, though, that the national news sources won't come out and even speculate on that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so scared to say anything. So when we talked about this last week and put the poll question together, I'm like, I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it at least merits conversation.
Mm-hmm. I would completely agree on that. And I agree that we're not saying that anybody did anything, folks. We are just discussing the possibilities.
It's all speculation.
It's all speculation.
Well, somebody did something.
Someone did
I will
do
say
something.
that.
And that's the show.
Yeah, we didn't just drop a rock. Oops.
Well, like I said, it's not an accident.
Right.
I think that's
the thing.
you can pretty much
It's a
rule
planned
that out.
accident.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
It wasn't something like, oh, well, we knew that this pipeline was going to be bad.
Yeah.
We built it kind of shoddily and it blew up. No.
Yeah.
That wasn't it.
All right, we're gonna take a quick commercial break here. When we come back, we're gonna continue discussing this, just because the United States has got operations going all over the world. A lot of stuff happens that we don't know about. Maybe it's for the best, maybe it's not. Who knows? This is the Jackson Electric Open Lines on 930 KROE, 103.9 FM, Sheridan.
From the simplest to the most complex electrical applications, Jackson Electric